Adam and Eve and Evolution, the first dialogue, the two creations. This is a resource script for a multimedia presentation in church. The characters in the play are Jess, a high school student aged about 15 or 16, Stuart, a grandfatherly figure well known to the youth group, Josephine, the voice of the narrator, a young archaeologist who's a specialist in sites in the east of Turkey, known in biblical times as Eden, Cush and Nod. The setting of the play is the three characters belong to the same church. Josephine taught a small study group in the church, and it included Stuart. It was all about biblical archaeology. Jess and others in the youth group have become interested. Jess is delegated to find out more from Stuart because Josephine's away on a dig. At times Stuart brings his own wisdom to Jess's questions, at other times he hears the voice of Josephine. By the end of the script, Jess herself is confidently bringing her own insights to the story.
I just don't get it, Stuart. None of the youth group do. We don't know what the minister means when he says it's a myth, but it's true anyway. I'd asked Josephine, but she's away on a dig somewhere. Can you explain Adam and Eve to me?
A true myth? Did he say that?
Yeah, he did. Said Josephine thought the same. How can it be a true myth? That's impossible. It's a contradiction in terms.
Don't be so sure. It is curious, looking back on it, for me to remember what it was all about 7,000 years ago, give or take 100 years here or there. I can't be sure about the dates anymore. 7,000 years of remembering. It's a very, very long time.
What do you mean?
In fact, a difference of a few hundred years can create confidence in the Bible as a history or make it more dubious.
They were my father and mother. Adam, Eve. Yes, it's true. My parents, Adam and Eve. Now, don't laugh, Jess. I might look old, but I know I don't look that old. They were my parents. You and I aren't related, but they were your parents, too.
Stuart, I don't believe you're Adam and Eve's son. Cain and Abel were their sons. I remember that from the Bible. And how can I be their daughter? That's just silly.
Good question, Jess. Never be afraid to ask questions. How can you be Adam and Eve's daughter? The older we get, the more we begin to see patterns in our lives. It's quite exciting, exhilarating, to sense a pattern for the first time. That's when we see the Yahweh Elohim at work.
Stop, you're going too quickly for me. What is the Yahweh Elohim? What's this pattern? Explain, please, and keep it simple.
The Elohim, yes, that's a very, very ancient word in Hebrew.
It means God. Yahweh was also the most sacred name for God, too sacred to utter, so the Jews said Lord instead. So the Yahweh Elohim translates to the Lord God.
Studying the Bible's just like detective work, especially the old languages. What was your other question, Jess?
Lord God, Yahweh Elohim. It's got a nice ring to it. The other question, Stuart, was you talked about a pattern. What pattern?
Oh, the pattern. Yes. Life has a pattern. You know from science and mathematics that there are patterns in nature and patterns in number. You know if you sew a dress, you need a pattern. Or build a house, you need a set of plans or patterns. Cathedrals are based on patterns too. Even evolution is a kind of pattern, a very profound one.
Now that I can see. Patterns are everywhere.
Well, each of us has the ability to see a very special pattern. The people of the Bible began to see it. So do some people today.
In the Bible, the pattern is called the image of God. The Latin term is imago Dei. It's a very good name for it. You hear it quite a lot in theological circles.
See what I mean, Jess?
I think so. Tell me more.
I'm going to start with Adam. In my mind's eye, I see a man, Adam, walking a little ahead of the rest of his tribe. Not alone, but first. They are in a great open space, high snowy mountains in the background, rising rounded foothills, a huge, wide, silvery valley. It's as if the landscape he's standing in is the space of a great temple, All around is silence. He and the others seem to be in the very presence of God.
Don't get too carried away.
The ancient places are like that. A sense of space, of belonging, of fitting in. It's easy to be caught up in the traditions, the drama. Biblical archaeology helps recreate insights. Like all science, it adds to our understanding of the faith.
Adam. You know his name is a Hebrew word for mankind, every man, each man, a sort of universal name. But Eve, she's not with him yet.
Adam was the first to see that God had spoken, had called his name, breathed life into the dust. Today, when we tell his story, we see Adam as a kind of pattern himself. This type of story has a name. It's called a myth. Bible scholars tell us that myth blends fact and fiction, history and legend. But this particular myth conveys powerful truths.
So the minister was implying a lot when he said Adam and Eve is a true myth.
But some people believe Adam was literally the first man. They say there were no other men before him. Who's right? What do you think, Stuart?
No, that's just ignoring the evidence. A multitude of facts point the other way. There were thousands of generations before Adam and his tribe. Before Adam was prehistory.
The technical term in biology for our species is Homo sapiens sapiens. It means man that knows that he knows. Adam is the first to know that he really does know there's a pattern of God. In fact, Adam and Eve is really a story from the cradle of modern civilizations. From the borders of Turkey, Iraq and Iran. The old names for these areas were Cush and Edom and Nod.
It all happened near Nod, Jess. Josephine's up there on a dig. Nod. Can you believe it? It's a lawless place today. Such an interesting word, though. We talk about nodding off when we're tired. I wonder...
Stick to the point, please. So Adam wasn't the very first man made by God. I still haven't quite got it.
Quite. The book of Genesis is saying something rather different. It implies there's a time when every man becomes Adam. And that is when he too sees, when he too knows, when he too hears the Lord God in the powerful forces of creation.
The scriptures say, "Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Thus the man became a living creature." That's a biblical demonstration that God is the powerful creator and sustainer of all life, even down to our very next breath.
Live for a few weeks without food, a few days without water, but only a few seconds without breath. Good, clean air is God's gift, Jess. Oxygen is the elixir of life, God's breath, a most necessary chemistry.
What a fantastic idea. God's chemistry, maybe also God's biology, God's pattern of evolution. Yeah, it's starting to make sense. That's kind of cool. The Bible world seems to paint a big picture, much bigger than I first thought.
Yes, the Bible world is astonishing. That's because it invites you to imagine, to see with vision.
Visionaries. People who dream big dreams. I'd never thought of the Bible like that.
So, Adam was the first of his tribe to see the imprint of God everywhere, even in himself. Maybe it was one starlit night when he looked in a deep pool, saw the moon, saw himself, saw everything. Anyway, it was an important discovery. That's why I suspect there really was a person called Adam. Genesis honours his brilliance and honours it in every person. After him, people would see themselves in a new way, with a new dignity, with a new delight. Really, it was a more important discovery than anything Newton or Darwin or Einstein ever put together.
Adam's pool, high up on the mountain of God, where the universal becomes individual, for the first time, and vice versa.
Tell me, exactly where did all this happen?
Adam heard the pattern of God in the flowing waters of the Tigris and the Euphrates, the Pishon and the Gihon. These are the rivers recorded in Genesis. They were the boundaries of Eden.
Oh, Eden, and the Garden of Eden. Isn't that sometimes called paradise?
Exactly. In the earliest times, paradise was a place. But later on it was no longer a place, but a moment snatched out of time. You might need a theologian to tell you about that idea.
Eden is one of the place names of the Bible. Archaeologists know approximately where it is by painstaking science and inspired guesswork, but it's open to question. Certainly, the Euphrates and Tigris are still here today, huge, major rivers. And of course, they've changed course many times since Adam's time. No river stays exactly the same over a period of 7,000 years. No idea of God stays exactly the same.
Eden must have been quite a place, even if we don't know exactly what it was all about. But I see trees and streams and pools and life.
It was a paradise. A paradise. Unbelievable. Adam saw the imprint of God in everything in it. The water, the food, the people of his tribe. He saw it in the fruits of paradise that he and his tribe found so delicious to eat. Fruits like apricots and apples and pistachios, grapevines and fig trees and pomegranates.
Stop! You're making me hungry.
He saw it, and he tasted it in the sweet cold waters of the snow-fed rivers, and he felt good to be alive when he bathed in the bubbling hot springs.
I bet he had some favourite places, maybe a most favourite place. I wonder what they were called.
Adam actually thought of names for all the places in Eden, the mountains, the streams, the rivers, the hills. Then he named the creatures, all of them. Naming is a gift. It confers a power on the one who names and that which is named. The creatures came to be named, Jess. It's one of the great images of the Bible. Maybe it was 2 by 2, male and female, but the Bible doesn't say so. Adam knew he was like the animals, but also unlike them. Kith, but not kin.
He named the creatures. Okay, I do like that. It's a kind of poetry, a poem of the heart. It shows how we can live in balance with nature. We do it by naming it properly.
Exactly. You've discovered a principle.
A principle, a law of nature. It needs a name. You can call it Jess's rule of naming.
Oh, you're on form today, Jess.
Names are very important in the Bible. They often tell us the most significant clue about the meaning of a verse or story. Adam means mankind. The feminine form of Adam is Adama. It means earth.
Now this'll bring you down to earth. Something happens in our story which is quite startling. The Lord God once, and only once, says something in his great creation is not good. It's not good that Adam is alone. He needs a mate. Just like all the creatures he names have their mates.
Interesting. It really is.
Obviously, from Adam's point of view, this sounded like an extremely good idea. Adam needed an Adama. Red Earth man needed feminine Earth. And she was called Eve.
Typical man. Needed a woman's touch. Not much has changed. The male of the species hasn't really evolved at all. Tell me about Eve.
Eve. She had fallen in love with Adam. Magnetic attraction. They knew it was going to last forever. It was as if she had been taken from his rib. He felt the pain of separation when they were apart. She was his, he was hers. They were inseparable. A match made in paradise.
I think Eve must have been a remarkable woman. She was a leader, just like Adam. I read women were really oppressed by the church, put down. But the Bible history has any number of great women leaders. Eve, she was the first. Pity it didn't quite work out.
She was very important to her own people. They were a small tribe that Adam's tribe had met wandering into Eden. But Eve stood out. She was young, yet wise. Among women, a goddess. No wonder she was called the mother of all living. In her were patterns of birth and nurture and care.
The Hebrew name Eve means the mother of all living.
So, the two tribes were blended by the power of love. They lived in paradise as one couple, husband and wife, and their tribes were as one tribe.
Paradise. The Persian word for gardens. Not the small garden lot of today's city dweller, but the great open plains of a nobleman's home. Adam and Eve, made these plains their home.
Adam and Eve in paradise is the story of every young man and woman who fall in love and see in each other the image of God. In the language of theology, this is love's pattern. This was a universal pattern that occurred irrespective of time, tribe, or culture. It still does.
But pattern can be rearranged, even ignored. Eve chose to ignore it. And then so did Adam. Adam had a mind of his own, and Eve had a mind of her own, even though she was shaped by his heart and he by hers. The Lord God spoke to them through the cool, refreshing breezes of evening, through the radiance and splendour of the sun by day and the moon by night, the stars shining in jubilation in the heavens and the planets singing in their orbits.
Don't get too carried away. Spare us the poetry.
Adam and Eve, private moments, private times. They enjoyed their love, shared their friendship, yet the Bible also makes it clear they knew love had its source, its origin in God. So, best of all, they enjoyed their conversations together with the Lord God.
What? Conversations?
What conversations? Eve and Adam talking together with the Lord God. No secrets. Relishing the fact that they had seen their purpose. They had found meaning in life. There were no limits, no artificial barriers or walls to divide them from the creation or the Creator.
Hang on, there's always a kind of barrier between us and God, or else God wouldn't be God and we wouldn't be human. So there had to be some limits between them.
Go on.
This is how it works. God created the pattern. Adam and Eve walked in the pattern. Then God was absolutely delighted to walk with them as they kept discovering more of the pattern.
Brilliant. They loved it so much they made a kind of pact between themselves and with God. To show they really were aware of how good life was and how happy they knew they were, they imposed a self-discipline. They even kept to it.
But if they broke it?
Well, think of making a promise to someone you really care about and then not keeping it. You'll feel ashamed, guilty.
There are boundaries in life, as Adam and Eve quickly discovered.
Are those boundaries something to do with Eve eating the apple? Isn't that what's called the temptation?
Yes, exactly. It's all to do with Eve and the apple and the temptation. And I'm going to tell you about that next time.